speed, power, control. These are what define a great motorcycle until they push past the edge. Some bikes weren't just fast, they were lethal. From unstable frames to wild power surges, these 12 machines didn't just test riders, they punished them. These are the most dangerous motorcycles ever produced. Number 12. Ducati Desmosedici R R. When Ducati dropped the Desmosedici R R in 2008, it wasn't just another high-performance sport bike, it was a street-legal MotoGP machine that pushed boundaries most riders had never even seen before. This wasn't built for casual weekend warriors. It was for those who wanted a taste of elite-level racing with all the risks that come with it. At the heart of this fire-breathing machine is a 999 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled VV4 engine that delivers a mind-bending 200 horsepower and 85 pound-feet of torque. That kind of output doesn't ask for skill, it demands it. Riders who thought they were fast suddenly realized just how far out of their depth they were. The bike tips the scales at just under 385 pounds dry, giving it an absolutely wild power-to-weight ratio. That means every input from throttle to brake had to be measured perfectly. One twitch of the wrist, and you were catapulting forward at race pace. Braking is handled by dual front Brembo discs and a single rear, but even top-tier stopping power struggles to rein in a machine this aggressive. The suspension setup is just as race-ready. It includes fully adjustable Öhlins forks up front and an Öhlins monoshock in the rear. Great for the track. Terrifying for the street. Every bump, crack, or dip in the road becomes a potential disaster if you're not completely dialed in. This bike was unforgiving, lightning quick, and absolutely brutal on the unprepared. The Ducati Desmosedici R R wasn't dangerous because it was flawed. It was dangerous because it was perfect. Perfect for the racetrack, not the real world. But if you thought a street-legal MotoGP machine was wild, the next bike was banned from public roads entirely. Number 11. Kawasaki Ninja H Two R. Some bikes are fast, others are extreme. Then there's the Kawasaki Ninja H Two R, a motorcycle so ferocious it was never allowed on public roads. Born from Kawasaki's aerospace division and raised on the racetrack, this machine is more of a mechanical monster than a motorcycle. It all starts with the numbers. A supercharged 998 cubic centimeter inline, four-cylinder engine cranks out a mind-blowing 310 horsepower and 115 pound-feet of torque. That power launches the H2R from 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 2.5 seconds. To say this bike accelerates is an understatement. It obliterates distance. With a wet weight of just under 476 pounds and a full carbon fiber fairing, the H2R is slippery, stiff, and surgical. Its top speed exceeds 240 miles per hour, territory usually reserved for fighter jets and drag cars. Few motorcycles have ever reached this level of velocity without disintegrating. The suspension is race-grade, fully adjustable Öhlins forks and a premium rear monoshock keep the chassis planted, but only if the rider knows how to handle this kind of brute force. Brakes are top-shelf Brembos with massive dual front discs and a large single rear capable of slowing this missile, but even then, stopping distances at high speed feel like you're fighting physics. Every detail of the H2R screams precision, but that doesn't mean safety. Without proper gear, training, and nerves of steel, this bike can and has overwhelmed its pilots. This isn't a forgiving machine. It is not designed for the street. It exists to push limits, break records, and terrify anyone who dares to ride it wrong. The Kawasaki Ninja H2R is pure mechanical dominance, a monster built not for the masses, but for the mad. Now let's rewind to a vintage machine that earned its danger status without needing a supercharger. Number 10. Vincent Black Shadow. In the late 1940s, the Vincent Black Shadow redefined what it meant to ride on the edge. Born into a world still reeling from World War II, this bike was a blacked-out menace built by British engineers with one goal: make the fastest motorcycle on Earth. And they succeeded. It wasn't just fast for its time, It was fast, period. The first production motorcycle to break 100 miles per hour in stock form, the Black Shadow wasn't just ahead of its time, it outpaced logic, safety, and rider expectation. Piloting one was like strapping yourself to a warhead with wheels. Its engine was a 998 cubic centimeter air-cooled V-twin that pushed 55 horsepower, an astronomical number when most motorcycles struggled to make half that. Torque delivery was immediate and relentless, with brutal acceleration that made even straight-line rides unpredictable. Riders often reported speed-induced wobbles, and with no modern suspension or frame reinforcement, any miscalculation could mean a deadly tank slapper. Weighing around 455 pounds dry, the Black Shadow was relatively light for a big twin, which made it nimble, but dangerously so at top speed. Braking was rudimentary by today's standards. Dual drums that faded fast and required pre-planning every stop. Suspension consisted of a girder front fork and basic rear shocks, barely capable of absorbing rough roads at high speeds. Even its top speed, an astonishing 129 miles per hour, was more a dare than a design goal. This was a machine that didn't just test rider skill, it demanded courage. A mistake on the Black Shadow wasn't forgiven, it was punished. Today, it's remembered not just as a legend, but as a time bomb on two wheels. But the next machine didn't just threaten its rider, it was nicknamed the Widowmaker. If you're still watching, you're clearly not afraid of a little horsepower, so do us a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe for more no-nonsense motorcycle deep dives. Number 9. Kawasaki H Mach 4 750. In 1972, Kawasaki did something completely unhinged. They released the H Mach 4 750, a two-stroke monster pretending to be a street bike. On the surface, it looked tame. Underneath, it was a rocket with no steering wheel. A motorcycle that didn't ask if you were ready, it just launched. This was raw, unfiltered power with zero apologies. At its core sat a 746 cubic centimeter, air-cooled, inline, three-cylinder, two-stroke engine. It delivered a mind-bending 74 horsepower and 57 pound-feet of torque numbers that even today demand respect. But back then, it was insanity. That power came all at once, often without warning. Riders described the throttle as violent. The front wheel lifted with barely a twist, and when the torque hit, it hit like a truck. Weighing just 454 pounds dry, the H2 was light, but not in a good way. The chassis flexed under pressure. At high speeds, it wobbled. In corners, it twisted. The front suspension couldn't keep up with the engine and the brakes. A single front disc and a rear drum meant stopping required prayer, not just skill. It was a performance package built on a frame meant for much less. Braking distances were long, fade came quick, and when you hit that top speed, 120 miles per hour, you better have had a plan because the bike didn't. It was barely held together by 1970s technology, and it showed. Fuel economy hovered around 29 miles per gallon, but no one bought this bike to save gas. They bought it to win, or crash trying. The H Mach 4 quickly gained its infamous nickname, the Widowmaker, and it earned every letter of it. Countless riders were thrown off, wiped out, or shaken to the core. This wasn't just a motorcycle, it was a death wish on two wheels. Danger doesn't always come from power. Sometimes it's about flawed design, like this next notorious Suzuki. Number 8. Suzuki TL 1000S. On paper, the TL 1000S had everything going for it. It was Suzuki's bold entry into the world of big V twin sport bikes, meant to go head-to-head with the likes of Ducati. But what started as a performance showcase quickly became one of the most dangerous motorcycles of its time. The danger stemmed from a single engineering choice, a rotary rear damper that couldn't handle the heat. As the suspension overheated, the rear end would become unstable, leading to violent tank slappers and unpredictable cornering behavior. Riders reported crashes that happened so fast they didn't even know what hit them. With no electronic aids to step in, mistakes turned into wrecks almost instantly. Even seasoned riders admitted they had to relearn how to trust the rear end every time they pushed it on the throttle. The TL was powered by a 996 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled V twin engine, producing 125 horsepower and 78 pound-feet of torque. The bike weighed 458 pounds wet, making it deceptively nimble, but the instability offset any handling advantage. Suspension up front was managed by inverted telescopic forks, while the rear featured the now infamous rotary shock system. Braking was solid with dual front discs and a single rear disc, but when the chassis misbehaved, stopping power couldn't always save the rider. This was not a motorcycle that warned you before biting. It simply snapped. Suzuki tried to patch the issue with steering dampers and recalls, but the reputation stuck. The TL 1000S became known as the bike that could ride like a dream or become a nightmare in an instant. Its legacy is one of potential, power, and peril. And speaking of torque-happy monsters, the next dirt bike made even pros terrified of airtime. Number 7. Mazzilli Two Stroke 600. Almost nobody talks about it today, but the Mazzilli Two Stroke 600 was one of the most unhinged dirt bikes ever unleashed on a motocross track. Hand-built in Italy and produced in extremely limited numbers, it featured an oversized engine shoved into a lightweight dirt frame with zero concern for rider safety. The result? A machine that wheelied in every gear, bucked like a bronco over jumps, and punished every lapse in throttle control. Even experienced riders admitted it was a monster that fought back. The power band was viciously narrow and kicked in like a hammer. It was a motorcycle you didn't ride. It let you ride it if you were lucky. It was a test of reflexes, balance, and raw courage every time you twisted the throttle, and it quickly earned a reputation as the kind of bike you either survived or swore off forever. One small mistake could send you flying sideways through the air, and recovery usually involved picking gravel out of your helmet and wondering what went wrong. At its core was a 600 cubic centimeter two-stroke single-cylinder engine. It delivered 76 horsepower and 58 pound-feet of torque, absurd numbers for a dirt machine. The bike weighed just under 248 pounds dry, meaning the power-to-weight ratio was completely out of balance. Suspension consisted of long travel front forks and a rear monoshock, both adjustable but barely able to tame the beast. Braking was handled by oversized disc brakes front and rear, though stopping was just the beginning. Keeping control afterward was another challenge entirely. The Mazzilli never gained mainstream popularity, partly because it scared off most would-be buyers. But in the world of extreme dirt racing, it became a legend. Few machines ever pushed the limits of off-road insanity quite like this one. But for the next one, we're going straight into supercharged chaos. Number 6. Boss Hoss V8. Because someone thought putting a car engine in a motorcycle was a good idea, the Boss Hoss V8 came into existence. A machine so extreme it blurred the line between power cruiser and mechanical insanity. Built in the early 1990s, this behemoth took everything subtle about motorcycle design and threw it out the window. At the heart of this beast sits a massive 5,700 cubic centimeter V8 engine borrowed straight from a Chevrolet small block. Depending on the variant and tune, this monster produces up to 450 horsepower and a brutal 450 pound-feet of torque. Now combine that power with a wet weight of over 1,100 pounds, and you start to understand why this motorcycle isn't just dangerous. It's an outright threat to anyone who underestimates it. Controlling that much weight at low speeds is a full-body workout. At high speeds, it's a test of courage. With its long wheelbase, the Boss Hoss wasn't built to corner, it was built to thunder down straight roads in a blur of chrome and noise. Top speed varies depending on gearing, but many models can exceed 140 miles per hour. The bike features twin front disc brakes and a large rear disc for stopping power, but bringing over half a ton of iron and fire to a halt is never quick or graceful. Suspension comes via standard telescopic forks in the front and dual coilover shocks in the rear, which struggle to tame the beast's mass during aggressive riding. Despite its cult following, the Boss Hoss remains a symbol of excess, an untamed American rocket that tests its rider's limits every time the throttle is cracked. Next, a bike that earned a nickname even pro racers feared, the Bone Breaker. Number 5. Suzuki TM 400 Cyclone. This wasn't just a motocross bike, it was a medical emergency waiting to happen. Introduced in 1971, the Suzuki TM 400 Cyclone didn't just earn a reputation for performance, it earned one for injuries. Built during the early days of motocross, it was designed to crush the growing American market with brute force. Instead, it became known as one of the most dangerous off-road motorcycles ever built. At its core was a 396 cubic centimeter air-cooled single-cylinder two-stroke engine. That engine pumped out 40 horsepower and 34 pound-feet of torque, delivered with zero forgiveness. The power band had all the subtlety of a stick of dynamite. 1 second you were idling, the next you were airborne. The bike's throttle was either off or hold on for dear life. Many riders described it as having a violent snap that lifted the front end or bucked the rider backward without warning. Weighing just over 220 pounds dry, the Cyclone was dangerously light for how much power it pushed to the rear wheel. The frame flexed under stress, and the suspension, standard for its time, was overwhelmed by the sheer ferocity of the engine. Rear shocks were notorious for bottoming out during jumps, while front forks offered little feedback during aggressive maneuvers. Braking was handled by front and rear drum brakes, which proved inadequate when the bike hit top speeds near 70 miles per hour in unpredictable terrain. Fuel economy was irrelevant, averaging around 23 miles per gallon, but no one bought the TM400 to save gas. They bought it to win races, until it started throwing even pro riders over the handlebars. It became known as the Bone Breaker, a title earned not through marketing, but through countless trips to the emergency room. If you think that was bad, the next bike proves that even Harley could build a danger machine. Number 4. Harley-Davidson Sportster S. The Sportster S is not a nostalgic throwback to Harley's laid-back roots. It is a modern, aggressive power cruiser armed with serious horsepower and a geometry that demands total attention. Launched in the early 2020s, this machine marked a radical shift for Harley-Davidson, one that came with a darker edge. At the heart of this aggressive redesign is the Revolution Max V twin engine, pushing 1,253 cubic centimeters. That translates to 121 horsepower and 94 pound-feet of torque, numbers more in line with superbikes than traditional cruisers. What makes this bike truly dangerous is how those specs are delivered. The throttle is sharp, almost surgical in response, and with a short wheelbase and high-strung chassis, even a minor twitch of the wrist can send the Sportster surging forward. The torque kicks in hard and fast, making low-speed cornering unpredictable and mid-range pulls borderline violent. At just 502 pounds wet, the lightweight frame magnifies every input, both intentional and accidental. Riders coming from larger, more forgiving cruisers may find the handling twitchy, especially when combined with the fat front tire, which tends to resist lean-in during turns. Suspension includes inverted front forks and a rear monoshock with limited travel, designed more for stiffness than comfort. That's fine on smooth roads, but hit an uneven surface at speed, and traction can vanish in an instant. Braking is handled by a single front disc and a single rear disc, both clamped by Brembo calipers, adequate for the class, but not ideal given the engine's aggression. Fuel economy averages around 49 miles per gallon, with a tank capacity under 4 gallons, keeping the bike light but limiting range. The Sportster S is a bold experiment from Harley-Davidson, one that trades comfort for combat. It is fast, sleek, and unapologetically sharp, but in the wrong hands, it's not a cruiser, it's a liability. But danger isn't just American-made, Italy had its say, and it screamed with a V8. Number 3. Moto Guzzi V. Some motorcycles are remembered for their innovation, others for their legacy, but the Moto Guzzi V is remembered for nearly killing the men who rode it. Built in the mid-1950s, this was not a production bike. It was a Grand Prix prototype designed to break the rules of physics and common sense. At the heart of the machine sat a 500 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled V8 engine, an absurd power plant for any two-wheeled machine, let alone one from an era where suspension was guesswork and tires were glorified rubber bands. The engine pushed out 78 horsepower and 35 pound-feet of torque, which doesn't sound extreme today. But at the time, that much power in a bike weighing just 325 pounds dry was pure insanity. The V8 used 8 separate carburetors and dual overhead cams, revving to 13,000 revolutions per minute when most bikes redlined near 6. Its chassis flexed under pressure, its drum brakes faded during long races, and its suspension, basic telescopic forks up front and twin shocks in the rear, wasn't even close to capable of keeping the rear tire planted under power. Riders described the experience as terrifying, violent, and unpredictable. It could hit over 170 miles per hour, but only if you had the courage to keep the throttle open and pray the frame didn't tear itself apart mid-straightaway. Very few dared to ride it. Fewer still managed to tame it, and even Moto Guzzi eventually gave up on developing it further because the machine had gone too far. The Moto Guzzi V8 was ahead of its time, both in brilliance and danger. It remains one of the most technically ambitious and unforgiving motorcycles ever built. Back to Japan, this time for the GSX-R that looked fast but rode like a loaded weapon. Number 2. Suzuki GSX-R 1100. If you wanted to learn fear the fast way in the 1980s and 90s, this was the bike that delivered the lesson. The GSX-R 1100 wasn't just a super bike, it was a missile with handlebars. At its core was an 1136 cubic centimeter oil and air-cooled inline 4-cylinder engine that produced 145 horsepower and 85 pound-feet of torque. That may sound thrilling, but in a bike weighing just under 595 pounds wet, it was borderline chaos. It felt like riding a stick of dynamite with a throttle, and few riders ever pushed it to its limits without serious consequences. The bike could hit 175 miles per hour, but what made it dangerous wasn't just speed, it was how the chassis and brakes struggled to keep up. The frame flexed during hard cornering, often triggering high-speed wobbles that left riders hanging on for survival. The suspension setup included standard telescopic forks up front and a monoshock rear, but even that struggled with the sheer output from the engine. Dual front discs and a single rear disc were the only things slowing this beast down, and they weren't always up to the job, especially under panic braking. There was no traction control, no rider aids, no margin for error. Fuel economy hovered around 33 miles per gallon, but no one cared. Riders bought it for power, and they got it in spades, whether they were ready or not. The GSX-R 1100 was legendary, fast, and downright deadly in the wrong hands. But the most dangerous of all? A bike so wild even its builders weren't sure how to contain it. Number 1. Honda NR 750. Some motorcycles are dangerous because they are wild. Others are dangerous because they are misunderstood. And then there is the Honda NR 750, a bike so complicated, so ahead of its time, that it became dangerous not for how fast it went, but for what it demanded from its rider. Built in the early 1990s as a technological flex, the NR 750 was Honda's attempt to bring MotoGP engineering to the streets. But what they created was a machine that blurred the line between innovation and insanity. At its core was a 747 cubic centimeter V4 engine, but not just any V4. This was an oval piston design, yes, oval pistons, intended to mimic a V8 engine with only 4 cylinders. The result was 125 horsepower and 74 pound-feet of torque delivered in a high-revving, unpredictable wave that caught many riders off guard. The bike's complexity was its own worst enemy. The throttle response was non-linear, the torquey curve was erratic, and maintenance required a level of technical expertise few shops were ready to handle. The NR tipped the scales at just under 540 pounds wet. Its aluminum twin-spar frame gave it some rigidity, but handling was compromised by a long wheelbase and relatively soft suspension. Up front were 41mm inverted forks, and in the rear a single-sided swing arm with a monoshock. While these specs sounded impressive, they didn't fully compensate for the unusual engine characteristics and overall weight distribution. Dual front discs and a rear disc brake provided stopping power, but braking performance was inconsistent at high speeds, especially when the engine's power kicked in late through corners. With a price tag north of $60,000 at launch, the NR750 wasn't just dangerous, it was elusive. Most riders never saw one. Even fewer dared to own one. But those who did quickly learned this bike was less about practicality and more about ego. It was a collector's item disguised as a performance machine, and for those who rode it hard, it could turn into a two-wheeled liability. Danger takes many forms, but when a motorcycle makes riders question whether the thrill is worth the risk, it earns its place in history. 12 bikes. One message: power always has a price. If this list made your heart race or reminded you why respect matters in the saddle, hit like, leave your story in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed. The next one might be even faster, or even deadlier.